Welcome back, everyone. You know we love diving deep into all kinds of pop culture topics, and today we're tackling something I know many of you have been eagerly awaiting.
The upcoming Harry Potter TV series.
That's right, and we're taking a special look at the perspective of someone who knows a thing or two about bringing this magical world to life. Chris Columbus, the director of,
The first two films.
exactly, Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, and you've been digging into 3 articles.
Yeah, from MovieWeb people and Screen Rant.
All featuring Columbus's thoughts. And let me tell you, he's got some pretty insightful things to say about both the potential and the hurdles they might face adapting Harry Potter for TV.
Well, what really jumped out at me is how Columbus seems to be almost passing the torch. He keeps talking about the limitations he faced with the films especially.
The time constraints.
Yeah, exactly. He had to condense so much, but he doesn't seem bitter or anything.
No, not at all.
He's genuinely excited about what the TV series can do. Like he's saying, go further, show us what you can do with this world.
I love that. It's like he's handing them this amazing toolbox and saying, okay, now go build something even more incredible.
And one of the tools he keeps pointing to is the chance to include all that book content that just couldn't fit into the movies.
Yeah.
Remember how he calls the TV series a spectacular idea in one of the articles?
Yes, specifically because it allows for that deeper exploration.
Exactly. And he brings up a very specific example to illustrate this. Peeves.
Oh, yes.
The mischievous poltergeist, sadly absent from the films.
Yeah. I mean, everyone remembers Peeves from the books.
Right. He was such a fun character, and Columbus even mentions in the MovieWeb article that they actually filmed scenes with Peeves for the first movie.
They did.
But they had to cut them for time.
Oh, that's right. You highlighted that part. He was one of your favorites from the books, right?
Oh, absolutely. Peeves for me was like this embodiment of untamed magic,
Yeah.
Kind that doesn't always play by the rules. And those interactions with the students, especially the Weasley twins, it just added this layer of mischievous fun to Hogwarts that I felt was missing from the films. It wasn't just about spells and potions, It was about the spirit of magic, the way it infused every corner of their world.
That's a great way to put it. And it seems like Columbus sees this series as a chance to explore not just more of that magical world, but the emotional depth of characters like Peeves.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about how the longer format allows for a more nuanced portrayal of those smaller but impactful moments.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about adding characters or scenes, it's about enriching the ones we already know. Like, think about John Williams' score,
Oh, yeah, I love the music from the Thun.
It's iconic, right? And Columbus actually brings up the challenge of recreating that musical magic. He asks, will they come up with a whole new score or try to capture that same feeling?
That's a great question. It's true, those themes are so ingrained in our perception of Harry Potter. It's like Williams created this musical language for that universe,
Right. With specific motifs for different characters and locations.
Exactly. Part of me wants to hear those familiar melodies again, but another part of me thinks maybe they need to break free and establish their own sound for the series.
It's a tough one for sure. Finding that balance between honoring the past and forging a new path, I think that's going to be crucial for the entire series, not just the music. And Columbus kind of hints at this in the MovieWeb article when he talks about the visual style.
I mean, when he asks.
Yeah, like,
No.
do they completely rethink the look of Hogwarts? After you mentioned how much you love the practical effects in the early films.
Oh, yeah. And he actually talks about the evolution of CGI in that same article.
Mm-hmm.
So considering that, do you think the series should lean more into modern CGI or try to recapture some of that practical magic?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, the original films had this tangible quality to the magic thanks to those practical effects. But CGI has come a long way since then.
It really has.
Maybe the series can find a way to blend the two,
Yeah.
Use CGI to enhance those practical elements and create something truly spectacular.
That would be incredible. And speaking of spectacular visuals, let's talk about something that always gets the fans buzzing.
Casting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's been so much speculation about who will take on these iconic roles, and Columbus actually weighs in on one popular fan casting choice.
Cillian Murphy as Voldemort.
Yes. You even highlighted that quote from the People article where he says, well, Cillian is one of my favorite actors, so that would be amazing. What do you think about that choice?
I think Murphy has this intensity and ability to convey a quiet menace that could be absolutely chilling as Voldemort.
Oh, yeah.
He has that subtle power that I think could translate really well to the screen, especially in a longer format where they can really explore Voldemort's psychology.
I can already picture those piercing blue eyes staring out from beneath the dark mark.
Right.
It would be a departure from Ralph Fiennes' portrayal for sure, but it could be just as impactful, if not more so.
And that's what's so exciting about this series, having the space to potentially reimagine these characters. You know, it's not about replacing the actors we loved from the films, but rather exploring different facets of their personalities and their motivations.
That's a really important point. And it brings us to the heart of what makes this TV series so intriguing. It's not a remake, it's a reinterpretation. And it has this incredible opportunity to attract both longtime fans like ourselves and a whole new generation of viewers who are discovering Harry Potter for the first time.
Exactly. And the Screen Rant article specifically mentions that appealing to both of those audiences is a major goal for the series.
It makes sense. They want to bring everyone along for this new journey.
And I think the key to bridging that gap lies in the faithfulness to the source material, something you were curious about.
Oh, definitely.
By delving deeper into the books, the series can offer a fresh perspective, even for those who know the films inside and out. And for new viewers, it's a chance to experience the story in its fullest form, with all the details and nuances that make the world of Harry Potter so captivating.
That's so true. I remember being completely engrossed in the books. You know, getting lost in all the small moments of everyday magic that weren't always captured in the films. And what's interesting is that Columbus hints at this too, this importance of those details that make the world feel real.
Yeah, like the difference between seeing a spell and understanding the why behind it, you know?
It adds a whole other dimension to the experience.
Absolutely, and that's something that I think the series format is uniquely equipped to deliver. They have the time and space to really unpack those smaller moments to show us the inner workings of this magical world and the characters who inhabit it.
And that's what I'm most excited about. It's like we're about to embark on this brand new adventure in this familiar and beloved world.
Yeah.
And speaking of adventure, one of the biggest questions surrounding the series is how they'll handle the overarching narrative, especially in relation to...
Oh, yeah, this is a big one.
Exactly.
J.K. Rowling, you know, all the recent controversies surrounding her. It's definitely something that looms large over this whole project. And it's interesting that Columbus doesn't directly address it in these articles.
Yeah, it is. You're right. I mean, it's a really complex issue. And it speaks to that whole conversation we've been having, you know, about separating the art from the artist.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where fandom and social responsibility are so closely intertwined.
Exactly.
And I think Columbus's silence on this matter is kind of telling in a way. You know, maybe it highlights the tightrope walk the creators are facing.
Oh, for sure.
Trying to honor the source material while also acknowledging the concerns of, you know, such a diverse and evolving fan base.
And I mean, the movie web piece even mentions how the head of HBO Max had to address Rowling's role in the production directly, you know?
Right, they could just ignore it. It's too big of an elephant in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you think they should navigate this?
Well, I think transparency is key, you know? Addressing it head on, maybe in a thoughtfully crafted introduction, or even weaving it into the narrative itself, I think that could go a long way. It's about acknowledging the complexity without shying away from it.
And maybe more importantly, demonstrating a real commitment to inclusivity and representation.
Yes.
Both in front of and behind the camera.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Actions speak louder than words.
100%. And, you know, it kind of ties into something else you were wondering about the series' potential audience.
Yeah.
The Screen Rant article mentions that faithfulness to the books might be the key to attracting both new, younger fans and, you know, those of us who grew up with the books and films.
Right. So what elements do you think would resonate most with each group?
Well, for newer fans, I think that the series has this amazing opportunity to really immerse them in the richness of the world building, you know? Things like the intricacies of Quidditch, the depth of the magical creatures, the history of Hogwarts. These are all details that were sometimes condensed in the films because of time. But in a series format, they can really flourish.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And for those of us who are already familiar with the world, I think it's about seeing those beloved details brought to life with care and authenticity.
Right.
Like you were saying earlier, you're hoping to see more of that everyday magic from the books.
Exactly. Those smaller moments that create a sense of wonder and make the world feel truly lived in.
It's like you said before, the difference between reading about a delicious meal and actually tasting it.
Yeah.
You know, the books give us the recipe, but the series has the potential to serve up the full sensory experience.
Absolutely. And you know, that makes me think about how much food plays a role in the Harry Potter world. Those lavish feasts in the Great Hall, the quirky treats from Honeydukes.
Oh yeah, the food is almost a character in itself.
It really is, and it's something that Columbus subtly touches upon when he talks about the challenge of recreating the feel of the films, not just the look. You know, capturing that atmosphere, those sensory details that really transport you.
Totally. And speaking of powerful tools, let's talk about magic itself. One thing that always fascinated me about the books was how Rowling created this system of magic that felt both wondrous and rule-based.
Oh, yeah.
Like there were limits, consequences, even a sort of magical physics at play. I'm really hoping the series delves into those deeper aspects of magic, not just the, flashy spells.
That's a really interesting point, actually. You're right, the books establish a sense of logic within the magical world, a set of principles that govern how magic works. It's not just about waving a wand and making things happen.
Exactly. There's intention skill, even a bit of scientific methodology involved.
Right, and exploring that could add a whole new layer of depth and intrigue to the series.
Absolutely. It's not just about good versus evil. It's about understanding the forces at play, the delicate balance between power and responsibility.
It reminds me of something Columbus says in the Movie Web article about the challenge of adapting the books. He says, they've got a bit of a challenge, I think.
He does.
And it's almost like he's relishing the fact that he's not the one facing those challenges this time around.
Yeah, it does sound like he's passing the torch with a mix of excitement and a touch of good luck with that.
Totally. But, I think that also speaks to his respect for the source material. He knows how complex and layered these stories are and how difficult it is to translate that complexity to the screen.
For sure. And that brings us back to the question of pacing.
Yeah.
You were wondering how they'll approach adapting 7 books worth of material into a series.
Yeah. Will they stick to a 1 book per season format or stretch things out over multiple seasons?
I think a lot depends on how much they want to expand on the existing material. If they're aiming for more faithful adaptation, they might stick with the 1 book per season structure.
Yeah.
But if they want to explore new storylines or delve deeper into the world, they might need to slow things down a bit.
It's a delicate balance for sure.
It is.
Rushing through the story could leave fans feeling shortchanged, but dragging it out too much could risk losing momentum.
Absolutely. Finding that sweet spot where the narrative unfolds naturally while still respecting the source material, I think that's going to be crucial.
Totally agree. And it makes me wonder about the tone they'll strike. The early books have that lighter, more whimsical feel.
Right.
But as the series progresses, things get darker and more complex.
Yeah. How do you think they'll handle that tonal shift?
It's an interesting challenge for sure, and one that Columbus himself faced when he directed the first 2 films. Those movies had a certain charm and innocence that reflected the tone of the early books, but then the later films took on a much more mature and somber tone.
You're right. And I think that's where the series format has a real advantage. It allows for a more gradual and nuanced exploration of that tonal shift. They can take their time building up to those darker moments, allowing the characters and the world to evolve naturally.
It's like watching a child grow into an adult.
Yeah.
You see those subtle changes over time, the gradual development of their personality, their worldview. And that's what I think the series can achieve with Harry and his friends. We can witness their journey from childhood innocence to mature understanding, facing those challenges and complexities of the wizarding world right alongside them.
That's beautifully put.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to that emotional core of the story, the themes of friendship, love, loss, sacrifice. Those are the elements that I hope this series prioritizes, regardless of any visual spectacle or plot twists. Because ultimately, it's those human connections that make the Harry Potter world so enduring and meaningful.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's what will ultimately determine the success of the series. If they can capture the heart of the story, that emotional core that resonated with so many of us, then they'll have achieved something truly magical.
So true. And that brings us to the final and perhaps most crucial question. Will the Harry Potter TV series capture that magic that made the books and the films so beloved? It's the question that just hangs over all 3 of these articles. And I think it's one that you've been thinking about too.
Yeah, it's the big one, isn't it? And what makes this so fascinating is that it's not a direct sequel or a reboot. It's got the potential to be something totally new.
Right.
It's not bound by the constraints of the films, and it's got the space to breathe to really explore all the little details of Rowling's world.
It's like Columbus almost sensed this shift in that Movie Web article. Remember how he asks, what do they do? Do they make it more sophisticated? Do they completely rethink the look of Hogwarts? It's as if he's saying you can't just rehash this, you know? You have to do something new, something that lives up to the books and the fans.
Right. And that brings us back to that idea of visual style. You know, how you were saying you loved the practical effects of the early films.
Yeah, and how they made the magic feel so real, so tangible.
And Columbus kind of grapples with that whole evolution of technology. You know, he talks about how advanced CGI has become, and he wonders if the series should embrace that or try to recapture that practical magic.
It is a tough question. Modern CGI offers so many possibilities. I mean, they can create some pretty mind-blowing effects these days, but there is something special about those practical effects, that groundedness.
For sure.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about finding a balance, you know?
Yeah.
Using CGI to enhance the magic, not replace it.
Right.
Like, imagine a scene where someone conjures a Patronus and that ethereal glow is a combination of practical lighting and some subtle CGI enhancements. That would be amazing.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me of the Patronus scene in Prisoner of Azkaban. So visually impactful.
That's a great scene.
And a lot of that came down to the clever use of lighting and mist.
Right. It just shows you how effective those techniques can be.
Maybe that's a good model for this series,
Yeah.
you know? Finding ways to blend those approaches.
Absolutely. It's about using the tools you have to tell the story in the best way possible. And the visual should always serve the narrative, not distract from it.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the heart of it all. You know what makes Harry Potter so compelling? The character.
The relationship.
Yeah, that's what we connect with. The friendships,
Yeah.
the rivalries, the mentorships, even the love stories.
It all plays out against the backdrop of this incredible world, but it's that human element that keeps us coming back.
For sure. And I think that's what Columbus is getting at when he talks about the emotional depth that the series format allows. You know, we get to see these characters grow and change over time. We experience their highs and lows right alongside them.
It's like we're part of their journey, not just watching it unfold.
Right. And in that way, the series could really surpass the films in terms of its emotional impact.
You know, that's a really interesting point. It's not something I'd considered before, but you're right, it has that potential.
So it all comes down to the choices the creators make. You know, will they prioritize being faithful to the books? Will they try to do something totally new visually? Or will they find some kind of balance between the two?
Those are the big questions, and the answers will really shape how we see this series.
Yeah, they have a chance to do something really special here.
And the exciting part is that we get to be a part of this conversation, you know? We get to think about these questions and see where this new generation of storytellers takes this world that Columbus helped create.
I think he'd be happy about that.
Yeah.
He seems genuinely curious to see what happens next.
It's like he's passing the torch, not with a sense of finality, but with a sense of hope, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's excited to see what comes next.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I have one final question for you. What would you say is the most important ingredient for capturing the magic of Harry Potter in this new TV series?
That's a tough one. But I think it all comes back to the magic that was always there, you know? The magic that drew us to this world in the first place. The magic of storytelling. The magic of connecting with characters who feel real, who make us laugh and cry and believe in something bigger than ourselves.
Beautifully said. I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights. Can't wait to see what magic this series brings.